David Whittlesey is about to head off on an epic journey down the Colorado River.
As early as I can remember, I was off in a little boat rowing around on water. I've discovered that I really, really enjoyed that kind of activity and the beauty and the solitude of the great outdoors.
Well, it looks like I'm going to be the only one on the river. We might as well pull up over there and start unloading.
David has been on a waiting list for a permit for 2 years. But when another raft trip is suddenly cancelled, it opens up the window he's been waiting so long for.
I was living a life of a bachelor and had no particular personal ties that would inhibit me from doing a trip like this.
But while David craves the solitude, the permit has also come in winter, a time when few others dare to take on the river. And this will be his first ever solo journey.
I didn't really intend to do a solo trip per se, but I didn't want to not take advantage of the fact that I had a river permit. It was an opportunity for me to use some of my skills in terms of building my rafting frame and figuring out how to package my particular boat. I would guess it weighed close to 2,000 pounds with all the gear I had on it.
Despite David's careful preparation, he's still apprehensive about going it alone.
I do remember when I first shoved off from Lee's Ferry, I really was quite nervous at the time. My primary trepidation had to do with the fact that I was going to be by myself entirely. As far as cell phones, you might as well forget those. They don't even work in the Grand Canyon.
With no means of communication if he gets into trouble, David's only backup is for his friend to raise the alarm should he fail to return as planned.
My parting words were,
Hey, if I'm not at Pierce Ferry when you get there, call for help, because it means something went wrong.
David's journey down the Colorado River takes him through the remotest part of the canyon, hundreds of miles from civilization. The journey of nearly 300 miles goes without a hitch, and he soon forgets his earlier apprehension.
I navigated almost the whole trip. Basically, all I had to do was continue on and successfully arrive at my destination.
The trip has tested all of David's rafting skills, and he's had the desolate beauty of the Grand Canyon all to himself.
There is no place quite like the Grand Canyon. You're a mile below the normal surface that we walk around on, and there's rocks exposed that are millions of years old. I mean, the beauty of it is just, it's very difficult to put into words.
As one of the few people willing to brave the freezing winter conditions, he's found the extreme solitude he was looking for.
The silence is unbelievable. I just find it, you know, the solitude down there is just entire, complete. You're on a 280-mile voyage that is totally isolated from the rest of the world as we know it. Once you're there, you're on your own.
David also knows his epic solo journey into the wilderness will be a life-changing one.
Almost everybody that goes down there comes back with a different outlook on at least one aspect of their life.
David has just 3 days left of his month-long trip through the canyon.
At that point, I'd done 100 and some rapids successfully without flipping or finding myself thrown out of the boat.
But now, he must face the one part of the trip he's been dreading. the most dangerous rapids on the entire river. Lava Falls.
You can hear lava falls long before you get to it. The tension kind of builds the closer you get to it and the noisier it gets. The general practice is that you get out and you scout the rapid before you go through it so you can sort of pick out where the major obstacles are.
Every set of rapids on the river has been rated for difficulty.
In the Grand Canyon, they have a rating system based on 1 to 10.
Lava Falls is a 10.
It's a true measure of a boatman. Even though I'd navigated all these previous rapids without use of my wetsuit, I was scared enough of the potential calamitous nature of lava falls that I put my wetsuit on. Above the rapid, there's typically a pool, so the water's really, really slow. And then all of a sudden, your velocity increases dramatically. The sense of acceleration can be disorienting in and of itself. Lava Falls has an actual waterfall, a 14-foot drop. I was terrified. It is readily avoidable if you know what you're doing and pick the right course.
But David is now completely out of control.
I can remember very vividly my boat turning vertical and nosing straight down the falls. I was slammed forward into my ice chest. The boat, for reasons which I still cannot figure out today, bounced back upwards, even though my boat by then was entirely filled with water. It was upright and I was still in it and we were still floating. I was thrilled. I figured I was home free. I remember thinking, you're done, you've made it. You've successfully navigated all 100 and some rapids in the Grand Canyon, and you're only 50 miles or so away from the end of the trip, and it's basically all flat water.
With Lava Falls behind him, David removes his life jacket and wetsuit. But he's forgotten there are still several rapids ahead.
My first recollection that I was in any danger was when I found myself floating directly into these rocks. They're sharp pointed and they look like teeth in a dog's mouth. And I was sideways to the current at the time. I knew that was something I really did not want to allow to happen. I did take a powerful stroke with my upstream oar in an attempt to pivot the boat around the rocks. I can't believe this is actually happening. I first thought that my boat will be fine and then it'll pivot itself around and float off of this thing.
But the current has pinned the raft tightly against the rock.
And before I know it, the boat shot up in the air. I was just totally stunned. How can the river be that powerful to shoot this 2,000-pound raft up in the air? I remember, looking down at the water and going, uh-oh, we're in big trouble now. I came up underneath the boat. My head was out of water and I was breathing.
The water is barely 40 degrees, and David knows he must get out fast or he'll freeze to death.
I was concerned that I would become entangled in the raft. I'm wet and I'm cold, and I'm with an upside-down raft.
With his raft now useless, he has no way out of the canyon. His only option is to turn it back upright. But with the raft weighing 2,000 pounds, that's going to take all his ingenuity.
I wasn't going to be able to just get underneath the raft and push it up and over. I realized that the only way of righting the raft was going to be to use a pulley rope configuration.
But to rig the pulley, he's going to have to go under his raft to retrieve the equipment. Into the sub-zero waters of the river.
It's dark under there, you can't see anything. I'm basically working by, blind feel. I have a picture in my head where things ought to be, which doesn't mean that they are, because everything's topsy-turvy and turned upside down. And I have to force myself to get in and out of the river to get this stuff. I needed pulleys and carabiners and webbing and rock climbing anchors.
With each trip under the raft, David's core body temperature plummets, and he must battle the extreme effects of hypothermia.
We don't often have experiences of prolonged cold, and that's what I was dealing with. Your blood thickens when it's cold, so, there's less oxygen being provided to your muscles, there's less oxygen being provided to your brain. You don't think as clearly or as sharply, and I was aware of that process occurring to me.
It takes David more than an hour to rescue the necessary gear. By the time he's done, he can barely move. But now he must figure out how to rig the complex pulley system.
I was very cold, and my thinking processes had slowed down, but the time it actually took was considerable.
David knows that if he can't haul the 2,000-pound raft upright, he'll be stranded.
I didn't even get it close to upright. One of the anchors let loose, came zinging by my head.
All of David's efforts have been in vain. His only option now is to find a way to lighten the load.
I could look downriver and see that there was a sort of sandy alcove a little bit downstream that I figured if I could get the boat over to, then I would have a large enough area to unload the rest of the gear.
But it's impossible to drag the boat along the steep shoreline. Cold and desperate, David decides to take a massive gamble.
Realizing that I was not going to be able to wade along the shore and pull the boat down with me to this alcove, I got on the boat. I remember standing up on this upside-down raft with one oar, trying to navigate downriver to get to this sandy alcove, sort of like a Venetian gondolier with his one oar navigating the canals.
But the river is so powerful, it's impossible to steer.
I tend to turn more than the raft when I try and turn the oar.
Swept past the safety of the alcove, he's now hurtling towards the next set of rapids. with no way of navigating his way through it.
There's literally nothing to hang on to. There are no handholds, no toe holds, nothing.
Desperately fighting for breath in the icy river, David's got to hold on to his raft or risk drowning.
And I managed to grab the lifeline around the boat.
But the powerful current drags him and the raft into huge underwater rocks.
It floated up onto the rocks and dragged me over the rocks with the boat.
David is faced with a desperate decision. If he keeps hold of his boat, he'll be smashed into the rocks. If he lets go, he'll lose everything.
My thinking was, if I don't get out of this river, it's going to kill you. So there I am, standing up on this outcropping, watching my boat float away and calling after it, hoping it would come back to me like I was calling after a dog.
Come on!
I was frightened. I kept hoping that by some bizarre circumstance it would eddy out someplace where I would be able to get to it. And once it disappeared from view, I just go, you know, good God, what am I into now? I realized I was in a pretty serious predicament. There's not even a spot to sit comfortably, much less do anything else. I started, seriously considering what my options were. Do you want to try and hike out of the canyon? Just what are your options?
Trapped at the bottom of steep cliffs, David can see no option but to try to scale the sheer rock wall to safety. After 4 days fighting to stay alive, it seems a search party has finally come looking for him.
I jumped up and down and waved my arms.
Help! Hey!
You're looking at this plane, and you can clearly see it.
Hey!
I'm wearing a bright red life vest.
Here!
It's just inconceivable that they can't see you.
Hey! Here!
But as the plane banks away, David realizes he's invisible from the air.
Hey! Come back! Come back!
His only hope of rescue
Come back!
has gone. As he prepares for a fourth night, David knows he's in desperate trouble.
I was getting to be pretty depressed. And I realized that, something had not happened the way it was supposed to.
If I'm not at Pierce Ferry when you get there, call for help, because it means something went wrong.
David is unaware that his friend has assumed he's just extended his trip. No one is even out looking for him.
I was aware of the fact that I was in dire predicament, and the longer it went on, the more frightening it became.
With no hope of rescue, David is at the mercy of the hostile canyon and totally alone. For 4 days, David has clung to the hope that his friend will raise the alarm. But he now realizes that no one is looking for him.
The mental battle was probably harder than the physical battle, keeping myself from allowing myself to believe that I was really going to die right then and there.
David is determined to dig deep.
I'm laying there doing nothing, and you can't just sit here and do nothing. You got to try something. I wasn't going to give up and say to hell with it.
But by now, his physical condition has deteriorated so far, he can barely stand.
My feet by then were just totally trashed, and it was very difficult for me to walk anywhere at all.
Despite the pain, he decides his only hope is to make himself more visible from the air by building a large distress signal. But that means shifting hundreds of rocks from the water's edge.
All of the rocks were down in this drainage, so I'd have to, go down there and grab up 1 or 2 rocks or whatever I felt that I could carry, and then drag them back up on this hillside.
It's an agonizingly slow and painful process.
I built a rock X that was probably 10 feet long, each arm of it. So, that's a lot of trips up and down, a lot of rocks to carry.
It's late afternoon by the time he's done, and he's utterly exhausted. It's 3 days since he last ate anything. He's now so weak, he's desperate for energy.
As every barfly knows, there's a sandwich worth of calories in every can of beer. I definitely advise against drinking 8-year-old beer. Definitely not one of the tastiest beverages I've ever imbibed.
Despite his exhaustion and hunger, he can't afford to rest. The temperature is dropping fast, and he's running out of firewood.
I started gathering the stuff that was closest to where I was, and then every day I'd get a little bit further away, so I'd have to spend more time gathering it up and getting it there. Obviously, you're becoming weaker and weaker all the time, and it becomes more difficult to do the things that you did the day before. As I was doing that, there's this little tiny lizard. It was probably, maybe 4 inches long, kind of scooted out across a rock. For some amazing reason, I was able to be quick enough to actually swat it. I kind of broke it in half and swallowed it down. I was hungry enough by that point in time, too, that I could eat anything. I was feeling that since I have no idea how long I'm going to have to do this, any nutrition I can get whatsoever is going to be better than none. You served a good cause.
David's ingenuity and determination have helped him survive for 6 days, injured and alone in the Grand Canyon. He expected to be rescued days ago. But now the hostile winter conditions have taken a terrible toll on his body, and he's beginning to lose his mind.
I had all kinds of wild fantasies occurring, you know. The world had been devastated by nuclear explosions, and I was probably the only human left on the planet. Particular incidents or scenes out of my past history would come to the surface of my consciousness.
Hey!
I remember pretty vividly thinking about and remembering events that I had shared with various different friends and so forth, and thinking about them and being sad that, you know, I might not see them again.
Hey!
Now too weak to gather wood or maintain his fire, David's core body temperature is dropping rapidly. He's losing his battle with hypothermia. David Whittlesey came to the Grand Canyon to experience peace and solitude. But stranded and at the mercy of the elements, he faces freezing to death, alone.
By Saturday morning, I was pretty down. I was, you know, really depressed. I wrote a farewell note to my family and friends and carved it into a little piece of driftwood. I marked down the number of days that I thought I'd survive there. It was important to me to let my friends and family know that I was thinking of them and that my death had been accidental.
After 7 days fighting to stay alive, David has nothing left. All he can do is lie down and wait for death.
I had done everything that I could think of to ensure that I would survive, and it seemed like, you know, nobody cared. My first inkling that something was happening was the noise of the helicopter. Fairly rapidly increased in volume and noise. When the helicopter came around the corner, I was stood up and I was waving my arms and jumping up and down and crying and laughing. And I mean, there was a great sense of relief. And you know, I've never experienced so many emotions all at one time as I did right then. I was laughing because I was so happy to have survived the whole ordeal, and I was crying because I was so grateful for having survived the whole ordeal. It really was an upwelling of emotions that was totally beyond my normal range of experience.
Having discovered David's capsized raft 20 miles downstream, the park authorities had launched a search and rescue mission.
They were amazed to find me still alive. They told me that they were sure they were looking for a body. The pilot had a sandwich that his wife had made for him. It was probably one of the best sandwiches I've ever had in my life.
Seven days after his accident, David was finally airlifted to safety. He went on to make a full recovery and is still passionate about rafting.
I never did believe it was my time to die. I do believe that you can enhance your chances of surviving by believing that you are going to survive. My life has changed significantly because of this incident. In some deep spiritual sense, that I have a more positive outlook, and I also think I have a better grasp on what it means to be alive.
"25-year-old Linda Scavana is preparing to set off on an epic solo driving trip.
I had 3 weeks vacation from work. It was definitely an escape, just a time to get away from the stresses of everyday life.
A student nurse from Pittsburgh, Linda is heading off across the length of America. A trip that she hopes will satisfy her sense of adventure.
I was kind of a rebel at times, my own idea about things. You know, when you're young and 25, the world doesn't seem so dangerous. I just wanted to see America. My plan was to drive 6 to 8 hours a day and then find a campground, pitch a tent, and sleep, and then set out early the next morning.
And to keep her company on the trip, she's brought her best friend, pet dog Coco Jin.
It was the first pet that I had ever had as a puppy. We were very, very attached. Definitely my child, my baby.
Linda spends 2 weeks traveling over 2,000 miles across the country. But before she heads home, she wants to make the trip extra special with a final hike into the mighty Grand Canyon.
It was one of the places that I wanted to visit because it's one of the natural wonders of the world.
The Grand Canyon is known as an epic tourist destination, but it's also a popular place for hiking.
Come on.
Before she heads off into the canyon, Linda stops off at a local store to buy postcards and let her family know that she's fine.
On one of the postcards, I saw a set of waterfalls, and I thought, oh, I'd like to see those. But I wasn't sure where you leave and what kind of a hike it was.
Do you know if there are any organized tours to the waterfalls?
No organized tours as such. If you drive up to the hilltop campsite, you can make your way down to the Supai village, and the falls are right down there.
Okay, that's good. Thanks.
So I wrote my postcards up, and I recall sending one off to my brother and sister-in-law.
To get to the waterfalls, Linda and Coco Jin must first drive to a staging post at the beginning of the hike.
I didn't know that it would take me as long as it did because it was, I think, maybe about 35 miles. But it was all dirt road, so it took me a couple of hours to get through that and to finally get to the hilltop.
By the time they get there, it's already lunchtime. It's late in the day to be setting off on a hike. But undeterred, Linda heads off into the valley.
Go, come on.
Yes, I was overwhelmed by the size and the enormity of it. It made me feel small.
It's 8 miles to the waterfalls near the Supai Indian village, where Linda plans to spend the night, then head back to her car in the morning. The heat makes hiking slow, and after a few miles, the trail becomes hard to follow. By mid-afternoon, Linda is still miles from the Supai village.
I heard sound behind me, and when I looked around, I saw that it was a mule train. And I think I had read something to the effect that that's how all the food and how their mail is transported down into this Indian reservation. The dog started barking, and I was concerned because I knew that, this was the Indians' territory, and I didn't want to cause any problems, so we held up, and I let them ride on by.
But as the afternoon draws on, the trail appears endless.
As I kept walking, I noticed that the sun was starting to go down.
With the light beginning to fade, Linda knows she has to get to the Indian village before nightfall. And as she reaches the end of the trail,
There was a sign.
You can make your way down to the Supai village, and the falls are right down there.
But the sign was not well marked. I didn't know whether or not to make a right or a left.
one way leads towards the waterfalls and the safety of the Indian village. The other out into the vast wilderness of the Grand Canyon.
For some reason, I made a right-hand turn.
Thinking she's heading towards the village, Linda heads off with Coco. But after yet another hour of walking, there's still no sign of life.
At that point, I was beginning to feel that I should probably be close by.
Coco!
With night approaching, Linda knows that it's too late to go back to the junction and try the left-hand turn. She has no option but to keep going. If she doesn't make it to the Indian village before dark, she'll be stranded in the middle of nowhere.
In the canyon, nighttime comes very quickly because of the walls. It would be pitch black down there, and I wouldn't be able to see. As I kept hiking and the sun was going down, that became a major concern.
Linda's backpack weighs over 20 pounds and is slowing her down.
I knew I could make better time without it because it was beginning to feel very heavy on my back.
Ditching the backpack will mean leaving behind her sleeping bag, food, and only supply of water.
I would have nothing except, the clothes that I had on my back and a few items that I had in my purse.
With no experience of being out in the wild, Linda makes a terrible decision.
I thought I could always come back for it the following morning. My priority at that point in time was just to make it to the Indian reservation, make it somewhere safe before dark.
Hello!
But as night falls, Linda and Coco are just tiny specks in the vast canyon floor.
Is anybody there?
Yeah, I was totally alarmed with getting dark and not being where I needed to be. That was my realization that I wasn't on the right trail.
And with the light fading, Linda has no chance of retracing her steps to her backpack.
You start thinking about the worst sort of things that can happen
Help!
and just kind of overcome by fear.
Is anybody there? Help me! Help!
The first night was devastating. It was very, very scary. You just can't see, other than the stars that are out. There's no artificial lighting of any kind.
As the temperature on the canyon floor plummets, Linda is totally unprotected against the cold.
In my backpack, I had my sleeping bag, and I had all my food supply and my water.
In the pitch black night, it's impossible for Linda to find her backpack.
So without that, I really had nothing to protect me from the elements and nothing to sustain me.
Her only source of comfort is her best friend, her pet dog, Coco Jin.
Coco Jin just stayed by me. I was thankful to have him because we could cuddle up with one another and, he would offer some warmth. I cried off and on, I think, the entire night, just out of fear and not knowing what was going to happen to me. The next morning when the sun came up, because I had wandered around, I wasn't really sure where I was. I wasn't oriented.
During the night, Linda wandered off the trail and has now lost her bearings in the maze of the Grand Canyon Valley. She's completely stranded in 2,000 square miles of barren wilderness. Linda has no option but to keep looking for a trail that will lead her to her backpack and out of the canyon to safety. But nothing looks familiar.
As I would follow trails, they would just lead nowhere. It's very difficult to see any kind of distance because there's all these little side canyons and walls, and you're like a rat in a maze. I kept hoping that I would see someone, which I never did, or that I would see a low-flying plane, but nothing.
After hours of walking, all she can see is the relentless monotony of the canyon wilderness.
I did a lot of hollering and screaming, just hoping that someone would hear, especially, you know, in the canyons, because noise can carry.
By mid-afternoon, the temperature in the canyon rises to over 100 degrees. And neither Linda nor Coco Jin have had a drop to drink in nearly 24 hours.
I remember getting very, very hot. I was thirsty and I had nothing to eat or drink. My mouth was just terribly, terribly dry.
In these conditions, human beings need around 2 gallons of water a day.
My nurse's training told me that I needed to have water, that there was no way I was going to be able to survive without water. I knew I could live without food, but the water was going to be essential because it's so hot during the day down there. And I guess real fear set in at that point.
Coco. Come on.
If I had been completely alone without the dog, I think I would have fallen apart.
Tired? Pretty tired right now.
I would talk to him. I'm sorry I got you into this, Coco. But we'll find our way out, you know, trying to keep positive.
But by early evening, Linda realizes she and Coco Jin are still completely lost within the vast wilderness.
I knew I was going to be down there another night. I think it was on that second night a little harder than the first night, because by that time I realized that there was something terribly wrong. I don't think that I was as hopeful in regards to finding my way out. I think I was leaning more towards the fact that maybe someone was going to have to find me. Day 3, I knew it was Monday, and I said, well, you know, I survived the weekend down here, but I still knew I had to find water.
Every year, around 4 people die of dehydration in the canyon. In this heat, Linda will be lucky to survive another day without water.
My nose and my mouth and my skin was just very, very dry.
Linda is desperate to find a water source. But in the dry and arid Grand Canyon, they are few and far between. But late on the 3rd day, she sees her first glimpse of hope.
In front of me, I could see that it was dripping. It was almost like, is it real? I wasn't certain if it was truly there. So I walked up all the way, and sure enough, it was moist, and the dog started lapping up water.
Linda has found a lifeline, a tiny desert spring.
I looked up to see where the water was coming from, and it was like 15 feet above my head, just coming out of rocks.
But the water is trickling down agonizingly slowly.
I was then thinking, well, how am I going to be able to gather up this water? And so I looked through my purse. I did have this little plastic eyeglass case. It was one of the few items that was in my purse that was of any worth to me. I thought, well, if I could get that set up in between the small rocks, then after a period of time I would be able to collect enough to get a cup that I could actually drink. It probably took an hour or so to maybe get like a cup of water. When your mouth is just so dry and you can barely talk, and then to have the moisture of the water and just knowing that that was going to possibly save my life, just sheer joy.
The drips supplied just enough water to allow Linda to regain her strength.
I knew that it was going to be important for me to stay there to kind of like regroup and recover a little bit, because my feet were swollen and I had blisters on them, and I was just exhausted. I was quite upset with myself, and then thinking that, well, now what do you have? You're away from your water source, and now you've dropped the only bottle of water that you had, and kind of back to square one again. Even though I had lost the bottle of water, I was still determined to get up to the top of this rock so that I could get a better view.
But when Linda finally reaches the top of the plateau, she realizes her efforts have been in vain.
I couldn't get much better view than I really had when I was on the canyon floor. The area is just vast, just all these little side canyons, and really nothing suggesting any kind of civilization, and just numerous rock formations. Not any kind of landmarks that you could pick out.
For the first time in days, Linda discovers she's not alone in the canyon.
Seeing those wild horses, I thought, well, if there's animals down here, where are they getting their water? The other hopeful thing was that if there's horses, then maybe there would be men that were hurting them or whatever.
In the barren landscape, this sign of life gives Linda renewed faith.
I mean, you start thinking strangely, perhaps I could even get a hold of one and ride it on out of the canyon. But I realized that was probably very unrealistic because you could only get so close to them and then they would run off. So I couldn't get probably within maybe 50 feet of them, if even that.
Once more, Linda is alone. But following the horses has led her to a welcome sight.
I noticed pools of water. And I remember looking at it and seeing little insects or whatever swimming around in it. And I thought, well, I don't really have any other choice except to drink it because that's the only way I'm going to survive. The water was kind of bitter, but it was wet, and I knew it would get me through another day.
As night falls, Linda drifts in and out of consciousness and is haunted by nightmares and fear.
I had started having dreams of animals coming and eating out my eyes.
Now seriously malnourished, Linda is starting to fantasize about an end to her hunger.
I began thinking about food quite a bit. And so I would kind of just sit there on a rock, you know, and think about dinner menus, writing those out in my journal. Spare ribs and potatoes au gratin, tossed salad, and cauliflower with hollandaise sauce. So kind of vicariously, I was eating through my menus that I would write. I was sitting there resting, and I decided that I was going to brush my hair. For what purpose, I wasn't sure.
Almost 3 weeks after getting lost, Linda finally hears the sound she's been yearning for.
I can hear the wings going around, and I knew it was close.
Back in Pittsburgh, when Linda fails to arrive at work, her family finally realizes she's missing, and prompted by the postcard she sent them, they've triggered an aerial search of the canyon. It seems her ordeal is finally over. But Linda is impossible to see from the air.
It was devastating that they didn't see me, but I could figure out why.
Linda realizes that if she can't be seen from the air in the vast canyon, the chances are she'll never be found. Linda's brother and sister-in-law have now joined the search. But when they arrive at the campsite that Linda began her hike from, they're greeted with a sight that fills them with foreboding.
That's her car, right?
Yeah.
Linda's car has been broken into, but is still exactly where she left it almost 3 weeks ago.
We were told that there was virtually no chance that Linda would be alive if she were lost in the canyons. There wasn't much chance we could even find her body. We were on a gruesome kind of mission. The scary part was that all the canyons look the same. And they're not marked by anything except for an occasional old wooden sign.
They arrive at the same sign where Linda mistakenly turned right and out into the wilderness.
Lake Canyon, this way. Maybe.
Linda's brother and sister-in-law turn left towards the Supai village and away from where Linda remains stranded in the canyon.
I was afraid for Linda. The chance of survival after being lost in a place like that just seems so remote.
Mentally and physically exhausted and dangerously dehydrated, Linda finally gives up all hope of ever getting out alive. Now, death is her only way out.
My priority was to find a place where I could just fall asleep and then hopefully die in my sleep. I thought, this is probably going to be it. I remember lying down and thinking, if I could maybe just die in my sleep, that would be the most peaceful way to go. I thought, you know, if I don't make it out of here, my parents will never really know what happened. My mother had lost a brother, her baby brother. And, you know, here's a woman that had gone through a lot of trauma in her younger years. And to me, that was kind of devastating to think that they would be going through that.
After 19 days, battling to stay alive, Linda finally gives up.
I heard voices, and it was almost like, is it a figment of my imagination or is it for real?
Four Native Americans from the local village had noticed footprints in an area where tourists don't venture, and using traditional tracking methods, have managed to locate Linda in the vast canyon.
You could tell by the looks on their faces that they were kind of amazed to find me alive. It was just joyous.
And waiting for her in the nearby Indian village are her brother and sister-in-law.
She looked wonderful and she looked horrible. She was skeletal looking and she was the color of bricks from the canyon soil.
It was just very emotional. It was the best feeling in the world.
The three of us just grabbed each other and put our heads together and just howled, really. You know, the tears just flowed.
But then, for Linda, the best surprise of all. The locals have also found Coco Gin, wandering lost amidst the canyon.
That was a happy reunion, too. Yeah, I was very happy. There was a lot of things that I didn't do correctly, a lot of things, and I, to this day, can't figure out why. With all the big mistakes that I made, you know, how I was able to survive.
Despite her ordeal, Linda made a full recovery and went on to get married and raise a family.
I just didn't think it was my time to go. And that stayed with me, and the persistence and the will, the strong will to survive.